Are you ready to learn the truth about the greatest conflict of the Wild West? For a long time, historians have debated which tribe truly controlled the vast territories of the American frontier. These lands were not empty deserts. They were an arena of struggle for resources and influence among powerful peoples. Local tribes established their own ways of life, which forced European settlers to reckon with them for centuries. Each Native American group had its own unique traditions and methods of defending its borders against uninvited guests. The Comanche and Apache built highly complex political systems, evolving into true empires without a single city. They had no grand palaces or stone fortresses, but their power extended for thousands of miles in every direction. They masterfully managed trade routes and controlled the movement of vast herds of wild animals. Every decision within these communities was made based on a deep understanding of the laws of the plains and mountains. These were flexible, yet incredibly resilient structures, capable of withstanding the onslaught of regular armies. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn why Spanish colonists feared the Comanche onslaught far more than the elusive mountain Apaches. You'll see exactly how large-scale raids by mounted warriors reshaped the map of North America at that time. We'll examine the role that trade alliances and unexpected betrayals played in this story. These details will help you take a fresh look at the history of the settlement of the wilderness. Surprising facts about the power of ancient chiefs will make you reevaluate the events of days long past. The hidden truth that everyone keeps quiet about lies in the true scale of Native American territories. Comanche lands covered vast expanses of the Great Plains, stretching from modern-day Texas to Kansas. This region consisted of endless, flat prairies with sparse river valleys. The political evolution of this people allowed them to unite scattered settlements into a single trading and military network. The Apache, however, preferred a completely different landscape for their homes. Their ancestral territories lay to the south and west, encompassing the harsh deserts and rocky mountains of New Mexico. The Apache brilliantly adapted to conditions of water scarcity and the scorching sun. The rugged terrain gave them an incredible advantage in terms of concealment and the protection of their settlements. The Comanche, on the other hand, relied on absolute mobility and speed across the flat plains. Geography became a defining factor in shaping their military strategies and means of survival. Gradually, the spheres of influence of these two powerful peoples began to overlap. The plains offered greater opportunities for expanding political influence and forming large alliances. The mountain ranges of the Southwest served as a natural fortress, but limited the scale of expansion. It was this territorial conflict that laid the foundation for a long-standing confrontation. Each side sought to force the enemy into battle under the most favorable conditions for itself. The Apaches tried to lure the enemy into narrow canyons and impassable gorges. There, the Comanche's numerical advantage was minimized due to the inability to deploy a broad front. The Comanche sought to drive the mountain tribes onto the open plains, where their maneuverability ensured an uncontested victory. This tactical stalemate forced both peoples to constantly refine their methods of waging war. Innovations in strategy became a matter of maintaining control over resources. Over time, climatic changes on the plains forced the Comanche to move further south. This movement inevitably led them into the ancestral lands of the eastern Apache groups. The clash of interests took on a systemic character, turning into a struggle for dominance in the region. The Comanche's political organization allowed them to muster significant forces to drive out their rivals. The Apaches had to respond with even greater decentralization and by retreating to remote areas. Gradually, the Comanche built a veritable trading empire in the territories under their control. They controlled the distribution of goods, which made them independent of outside influence. The Apache chose the path of self-sufficiency, making the most of the desert's scarce resources. Each of these strategies proved highly effective in frontier conditions. The clash of two such different survival systems was bound to reveal the stronger one. The southwestern lands witnessed a multitude of tactical maneuvers and flanking movements. The Comanche methodically pushed the boundaries of their influence further and further west and south. They created buffer zones that protected their main trading centers on the plains. The Apaches turned their remaining territories into an impassable obstacle course for any outsider. Their knowledge of every trail allowed them to withstand the pressure of the vast empire of the plains. The development of this conflict forever changed the balance of power in the Wild West. Both sides demonstrated an incredible ability to adapt to changing environmental conditions. Their methods of territorial control were even studied by officers of European armies. We'd love to hear your thoughts on these two different approaches to geography. Write about it in the comments and be sure to subscribe to our channel. What if everything you were taught is outdated and needs to be rethought? The Comanche military organization was radically different from the familiar European standards of the time. They did not have a regular army in the classical sense of the term. Instead, they created a society where every member of the community was trained in the art of maneuvering from an early age. Their strength lay in a decentralized yet incredibly well-coordinated mobilization system. The structure of their units was based on voluntary participation and the personal authority of their leaders. Any experienced strategist could sound the call and assemble a group for a raid. The size of such a unit ranged from a few dozen to hundreds of experienced fighters. Decisions were made in a council where every participant had the right to voice their opinion. This democratic approach made their military machine extremely flexible and adaptable. Communication between Comanche groups was maintained to a complex system of messengers. They could relay information about the approach of outsiders over vast distances in a matter of days. This allowed them to quickly concentrate their forces in the right place at the right time. Such operational logistics were completely beyond the reach of their rivals in the early days of the frontier. The Comanches operated as a single organism, reacting instantly to any external changes. Their tactics were based on overwhelming maneuverability in open terrain. Comanche units approached their targets at incredible speed, giving the enemy no time to prepare. They attacked across a broad front, showering the enemy with a hail of projectiles on the move. Such coordination of movements was achieved through years of continuous training on the plains. Their maneuvers threw regular units, accustomed to linear formations, into disarray. An important part of their strategy was to deny the enemy any chance of retreat. They skillfully cut off escape routes, encircling scattered enemy groups. The Comanche never attacked well-fortified and defended positions head-on. They preferred to wear down the enemy through long sieges and by cutting off supply lines. This rational approach allowed them to achieve maximum results with minimal effort. A unique feature of the Comanches was their ability to integrate defeated enemies into their society. They often accepted prisoners into their ranks, teaching them their methods of survival. This ensured a constant influx of new manpower and knowledge into their political system. Gradually, they evolved into a complex conglomerate of diverse groups united by a common goal. This cultural assimilation made their empire incredibly resilient to external crises. Comanche leaders possessed not only strategic thinking, but also outstanding diplomatic skills. They skillfully exploited the conflicts between various groups of European colonists. Forming temporary alliances was a common practice for achieving long-term political goals. They used these agreements to ensure the safety of their trade caravans. Diplomacy became as important a weapon for the Comanche as maneuverable tactics on the battlefield. In times of great danger, scattered Comanche groups would unite into massive formations. Thousands of warriors could gather at a designated location to launch a large-scale campaign. Managing such large numbers of people required the highest level of discipline and organization. Signals in battle were transmitted using mirrors and complex movements understood only by their own people. This coordination made them a truly formidable force across the entire continent. The Comanche system proved its effectiveness. allowing them to establish the largest network of influence in the region. They imposed their rules on all their neighbors, forcing them to reckon with the power of the plains. Their approach to organization became the standard for many other peoples of the Wild West. Are you ready to discover in the next chapter exactly how the Apache managed to stand up to this perfect machine of domination? The innovative methods of the mountain warriors will make you look at defensive tactics in a completely different light. What happens in the shadows lies in the mountain people's unique philosophy of survival. The Apache relied on the absolute invisibility and unpredictability of their actions. Unlike the Comanche, they avoided concentrating their forces on a large scale. Their society consisted of many small, completely independent, and self-sufficient groups. This fragmentation made it impossible to deliver a single, decisive blow against their entire people. Each local group knew its section of the mountainous terrain in minute detail. They turned the rugged terrain into their primary strategic resource and shield. The Apache warning system was based on visual signals and knowledge of secret trails. They relayed information about the movements of outsiders from peak to peak. This allowed them to vanish long before the arrival of superior enemy forces. The Apache military approach was based on the principles of wearing down the enemy and launching pinpoint strikes. They never engaged in direct confrontation unless victory was assured. Their ideal operation involved a sudden raid to seize resources and an immediate retreat into the mountains. This tactic drove their pursuers to complete mental and physical exhaustion. Regular troops simply lost track of them on the rocky plateaus of New Mexico. Discipline in Apache bands was maintained by strict traditions and respect for elders. Training began at an early age with the development of phenomenal endurance. They learned to travel vast distances with minimal supplies of water and provisions. Their ability to survive in the harshest conditions amazed even seasoned explorers. Every member of the group was a jack of all trades, capable of operating independently. A unique feature of the Apache was complete equality in strategic decision-making. A leader was chosen solely for the duration of a specific campaign based on merit. Once the mission was complete, he would return to being an ordinary member of his community. The absence of a rigid hierarchy deprived the enemy of the ability to decapitate the resistance with a single decisive blow. This horizontal management structure proved incredibly resilient under constant pressure. The Apaches masterfully employed disinformation and the creation of false trails on the ground. They could simulate the movement of a large detachment, luring pursuers into a waterless desert. Meanwhile, the main group quietly retreated in the opposite direction through secret mountain passes. Such maneuvers forced the enemy to waste enormous resources. This intellectual game of staying one step ahead became their signature style of conflict. The Apache economy was less dependent on large-scale trade networks than that of the Comanche. They relied on internal resources and the results of targeted raids on neighboring settlements. This made them immune to economic blockades and trade embargoes. Their material culture was extremely ascetic and functional, unburdened by superfluous items. Their mobility allowed them to relocate within a few hours. Interaction between Apache groups was complex and multifaceted. They could unite to solve common problems, but quickly dispersed once their goal was achieved. Such flexibility prevented the enemy from predicting their next moves. They acted like scattered mercury, slipping away from any pressure. This tactic became a classic example of successful, decentralized defense. The Apache's ability to turn nature itself into their ally became their greatest asset. They proved that brute force can always be countered with cunning and knowledge of the terrain. Their methods of resistance went down in history as an unparalleled example of survival in extreme conditions. If you enjoy our dive into the history of the Wild West, please like this video. Your support helps us create even more high-quality and interesting content. Guess what happened next when these two systems finally clashed? The tactic of the lightning strike became the hallmark of the Plains warriors as they expanded their territories. The Comanche perfected the art of the maneuvering attack, far ahead of their time. Their units appeared as if out of nowhere, delivering pinpoint strikes and vanishing instantly. They used the element of surprise to completely crush the enemy's will to resist. The foundation of this tactic was perfect mastery of space and timing. Scouts meticulously studied enemy positions long before the main operation began. They recorded daily routines, supply routes, and vulnerabilities in the defenses. Based on this data, a detailed plan for a lightning-fast incursion into the territory was developed. The speed of execution left the defenders no chance to organize a counterattack. When encountering foot soldiers, the Comanches used a circular formation to maintain constant pressure. They circled around the enemy, gradually tightening the ring and depriving them of any room to maneuver. This tactic created a dense barrage of projectiles from all possible directions. The defenders lost their sense of direction and their ability to coordinate their actions. As a result, their formation collapsed, and resistance was quickly suppressed across all sectors. In battle, the Comanches relied on the exceptional accuracy and rate of fire of their traditional weapons. Their weapons allowed them to fire numerous projectiles in the time it took European models to reload. This created a massive advantage in firepower at close range. They also masterfully used thick leather shields to protect themselves from counterattacks. Their protective gear was lightweight and did not hinder their swift movements. Faced with this force, the Apaches developed their own methods of countering it. They avoided open spaces where the Comanches' maneuverability gave them an unquestionable advantage. The mountain tribes built deeply echeloned defenses in canyons, using natural stone barricades. They lured the plainsmen's detachments into narrow canyons where they could not maneuver. In such confined spaces, the advantage of speed was nullified, and the battle shifted to a positional phase. In rugged terrain, the Apaches actively employed ambush tactics. They hid in crevices and behind boulders, remaining completely invisible until the very start of the attack. Their strikes were precise and targeted the leaders of enemy groups. Eliminating the commanders threw the attackers into chaos and forced them to retreat. This strategy allowed them to halt the advance of large enemy units with minimal forces. An important element of the mountain people's tactics was the use of decoys to divert attention. They might leave part of their supplies in plain sight to slow down their pursuers. While the enemy examined the find, the Apaches took up more advantageous defensive positions. They masterfully played on their enemy's greed and impatience. Psychological manipulation was an important part of their defensive doctrine. The clash of these two tactics led to sweeping changes in the region's geography. The Comanches gradually pushed the eastern Apaches from the Great Plains into the foothills. They established tight control over all key trade routes on the prairies. The Apaches were forced to adapt to the even harsher conditions of the highlands. Their survival skills in this hostile environment reached incredible heights. Both sides reached the pinnacle of their military strategies. They learned to perfectly exploit the advantages of their terrain and conceal their weaknesses. Their clash became a classic example of the conflict between maneuver warfare and positional defense. Are you ready to learn how European colonists intervened in this complex system of relationships? In the next chapter, we will examine the role of the Spanish Empire in this large-scale confrontation. The arrival of Spanish colonists in the southwest of North America radically changed the political landscape. The Europeans brought with them new technologies, goods, and a completely different concept of land ownership. They began building fortified settlements and missions, attempting to establish a foothold in the new territories. This incursion disrupted the fragile balance of power among the region's indigenous peoples. The Spanish quickly realized they were facing highly organized and formidable opponents. The Comanche saw the arrival of these new players as an opportunity to expand their influence. They quickly recognized the economic potential of interacting with the wealthy Spanish settlements. Goods from Europe became an important resource in their complex trading network. The Comanche established control over supply routes, dictating their terms to the colonial authorities. They alternated diplomatic agreements with heavy pressure on the empire's borders. The Spanish administration attempted to build a defense system along the northern borders of its territories. They erected forts and stationed garrisons to protect trade caravans and settlers. However, their cumbersome military machine proved ineffective against the maneuverable prairie forces. The Comanche easily bypassed fortified positions, striking deep into the enemy's rear. European tactics of linear formations were utterly useless in the vast, open spaces. The authorities of New Spain were truly awestruck by the power of the Comanche Empire. In their reports, officers described them as a flawlessly organized and incredibly swift force. The Spanish were forced to pay enormous tribute in goods to maintain peace along the borders. In essence, the European Empire became a vassal of the Native American political alliance. This situation was unique in the entire history of the colonization of North America. The Spanish relationship with the Apaches developed quite differently due to differences in tactics. The mountain people did not seek to conclude large-scale trade agreements or political alliances. They viewed colonial settlements solely as a source of necessary resources. The Apaches carried out lightning-fast, pinpoint raids on warehouses and ranches, instantly disappearing into the mountains. It was impossible to bring them to the negotiating table or force them to sign a peace treaty. Spanish punitive expeditions against the Apaches suffered crushing defeats time and again. Heavily armed detachments simply could not find the invisible enemy in the labyrinth of canyons. The soldiers suffered from thirst, exhaustion, and constant psychological strain. The Apaches wore down their pursuers with false trails and sudden ambushes. The mountainous terrain became a veritable trap for the European colonial troops. Despite the Apaches' elusiveness, the Spanish considered the Comanches a far more serious threat. The Comanches possessed the ability to rally vast numbers of people to exert organized pressure. Their influence extended across vast territories, threatening the very foundations of the Spanish presence. The Apaches, on the other hand, operated in scattered groups, serving more as a constant irritant. The political and military power of the plains forced Madrid to seek unconventional diplomatic solutions. Spanish governors began to employ a divide-and-conquer strategy to stabilize the situation. They attempted to pit the Comanches and Apaches against one another, promising support to both sides. This cunning game had mixed success over the course of several decades. Native American leaders fully understood the Europeans' motives and exploited these intrigues to their own advantage. Diplomatic maneuvers became no less complex than tactical movements on the battlefield. The Spanish never managed to establish stable political relations with the Apaches. Sporadic conflicts and local skirmishes continued until the Europeans left the region. The difference in their approaches to diplomacy clearly demonstrated the differences in the political organization of the two peoples. The Comanche were building an empire, while the Apache defended the absolute independence of their isolated bands. This difference in worldview determined their future fate on the frontier. The secret, only now revealed, lies in the actual details of their direct clashes. The transition from local skirmishes to full-scale confrontation between the Comanches and the Apaches was inevitable. Control over the buffer zones became a matter of economic survival for both sides of the conflict. The Great Plains could no longer accommodate the ambitions of two such powerful peoples. A series of brutal campaigns began for ultimate dominance in this strategically important region. One of the most significant clashes took place in the Wichita Mountains region at the junction of the territories. The Comanche assembled an unprecedentedly large force by uniting several independent political groups. Their goal was to completely drive the eastern Apache out of the rich hunting grounds. The Apaches attempted to entrench themselves on the high ground, using the rugged terrain to create defensive lines. But the maneuverability of the Comanche's flatland units allowed them to outflank these fortifications. The Comanches methodically cut off the defenders from water sources and supply routes. They employed a strategy of attrition, avoiding risky frontal assaults. The mountain tribes found themselves isolated on waterless plateaus under the scorching sun of the prairies. Deprived of their main advantages, they were forced to begin a disorganized retreat. This campaign became a turning point in the geographical balance of power in the Southwest. Another arena of large-scale operations was the Pecos River Valley in New Mexico. Here, the Apaches attempted to mount a counteroffensive, employing the tactic of lightning-fast raids from mountain canyons. They attacked Comanche outposts, disrupting their supply lines. The Comanche responded by organizing mobile patrols that thwarted any attempts to penetrate the plains. The territory turned into a zone of constant tension and continuous tactical maneuvers. Under these conditions, the Comanche demonstrated the superiority of their intelligence and diplomatic network. They won over other tribes in the region by promising them a share of the trade. A powerful coalition formed, which began methodically pushing the Apache further and further into the mountains. Joint operations allowed them to control vast expanses of territory and thwart any incursions. Political isolation became a more serious problem for the mountain groups than military pressure. The confrontation culminated in a great battle in the Palo Duro Canyon area of Texas. The Comanche used this deep ravine as a giant natural fortress for their encampments. The Apaches attempted a surprise attack on the strategic center of the Plains Empire. However, a complex system of lookouts warned the canyon's inhabitants of the strangers' approach. The attackers found themselves trapped on the steep slopes, facing an organized defense. The defenders of the canyon used their knowledge of every ledge and trail to repel the attack. They pelted the enemy with a hail of projectiles from above, preventing them from descending to the bottom. The Apaches suffered heavy losses and were forced to retreat rapidly to the west. This defeat cemented the Comanche's dominance over the Great Plains once and for all. The mountain tribes lost all hope of ever regaining their eastern territories. As a result of these campaigns, a new, rigid border formed between the two worlds. The Comanches erected an impenetrable barrier of patrols along the western edges of their domain. The Apaches turned the mountain ranges into an impassable fortress, cutting themselves off from the rest of the continent. The conflict entered a phase of stalemate without major territorial changes. Each side recognized the enemy's strength in its native geographical environment. This clash became the greatest example of the evolution of Native American tactics and strategy. They demonstrated remarkable adaptability and organizational skills under the most challenging frontier conditions. Their military experience forever changed the methods of waging conflict across the entire continent. Want to know which outstanding leaders were behind these historic victories and maneuvers? In the next chapter, we'll meet the true strategists of the Wild West. The history of the Comanche Empire is inextricably linked to the names of outstanding leaders and brilliant strategists. One of the most famous figures was Quanah Parker, a man of remarkable destiny and talent. He united many scattered groups under his leadership during a period of deep crisis. His political acumen allowed the people of the plains to adapt to the rapidly changing conditions of the frontier. He became a symbol of diplomatic flexibility and an unyielding will to preserve independence. Quanah Parker masterfully combined traditional methods of governance with innovative economic approaches. He built relationships with American ranchers, profiting from the passage of herds through Comanche lands. This ensured a steady flow of resources for his people during the hardest times. His ability to negotiate on equal terms with officials earned him the sincere respect of his opponents. He proved that a people's strength lies not only in their maneuvers, but also in the wisdom of their leader. Another legendary strategist was Chief Iron Jacket, who earned his name from his chainmail. He found an old Spanish suit of armor and used it to psychologically intimidate his enemies. His appearance before enemy lines caused confusion due to the light reflecting metal. He was a master of sudden flanking maneuvers and perfectly timed attacks. His actions clearly demonstrated the highest level of tactical training among the warriors of the plains. Iron Jacket commanded the defense of key river crossings on the empire's northern borders. He established a system of mobile outposts that reacted instantly to any incursion by outsiders. His units were renowned for their incredible coordination and ability to reorganize on the fly. He transformed his units into elite forces that struck fear into the hearts of neighboring peoples. The memory of his strategic maneuvers still lives on in the legends of the Great Plains. The name of the humpback bull chieftain is associated with unwavering fortitude and loyalty to ancient traditions. He led the most conservative groups, which refused to make any compromises with outsiders. His units controlled the most inaccessible sections of the canyons, establishing impregnable bases there. He was an unrivaled master of stealthy movement and setting up perfect ambushes along the routes. His men could go weeks without supplies, surviving solely on the resources of the prairies. Bullhump developed a unique system of decentralized supply for his mobile units in the field. He organized secret supply caches in caves and crevices throughout the territory under his control. This allowed his detachments to travel light and outmaneuver the enemy. His logistical genius enabled the resistance to continue for many years after the fall of the main forces. He went down in history as a model of absolute devotion to the ideals of the plains. These leaders embodied the best qualities of the Comanche Empire's complex political system. Each made a unique contribution to preserving the power of their people. They were not merely warriors, but far-sighted politicians, economists, and talented administrators. Their names are forever inscribed in gold in the annals of the settlement of the American continent. Their strategies are still studied today as examples of brilliant tactical planning. The legacy of these strategists lives on in the culture and traditions of the modern inhabitants of the plains. They prove that indigenous peoples possess the highest level of political and social organization. Their empire became a phenomenon that cannot be ignored when studying the history of the Wild West. The organizational talents of these leaders allowed them to stand toe-to-toe with massive colonial armies. Their experience in governing vast territories remains a unique example of state building. The mountain ranges of the Southwest also produced their own unique leaders, who possessed incredible talents. One of the most outstanding Apache strategists was Cochise, who united scattered groups of mountain dwellers. He possessed phenomenal knowledge of the terrain and knew how to use every rock to protect his people. Cochise built an impenetrable defense in the Dragon Mountains, turning them into a natural citadel. His intellectual approach to conflict forced his enemies to treat him with immense respect. Cochise was a master of diplomacy and complex, multi-stage negotiations. He repeatedly negotiated truces with the U.S. military to secure a respite for his people. He always kept his promises without fail, which earned him a reputation as a man of exceptional honor. Even his opponents acknowledged his supreme moral character and depth of strategic thinking. He became a symbol of noble and unwavering resistance to external pressure. The name Geronimo became synonymous with elusiveness and absolute unpredictability in the history of the Wild West. This leader was not a hereditary chief, but earned his authority through outstanding personal qualities. He perfected the tactics of dispersal and stealthy maneuvering to a level of mastery unattainable by others. His small detachments could cross state borders while remaining completely unnoticed by patrols. He became a true nightmare for the two regular armies of Mexico and the United States. Geronimo masterfully used disinformation and psychological manipulation in his campaigns. He left false trails, forcing garrisons numbering in the thousands to chase phantoms through empty canyons. His men knew how to vanish into the desert, leaving no trace of their presence behind. He turned survival in harsh conditions into the main tactical advantage of his small band. His men's ability to go without water and food for weeks amazed his contemporaries. Mangas Colorados, whose name translates as red sleeves, was a giant among Apache leaders. He was distinguished by his outstanding physical stature and incredible political acumen. He was the first to realize the need to form a broad coalition of various groups to confront a common threat. Through diplomatic marriages, Mangas Colorados united several large communities into a single defensive alliance. This allowed them to organize a large-scale resistance against the settlers' advance into the southwest. This strategist understood the importance of controlling key transportation routes in the region. He organized an effective blockade of the mountain passes, effectively halting the movement of outsiders through his territories. His tactics were based on cutting off supply lines and depleting the enemy's resources. He never risked his men needlessly, preferring to wait for the perfect moment to maneuver. Rational calculation was the foundation of his successful political and military leadership. Victorio was an unrivaled tactician of maneuverable defense on the open plains. He combined traditional Apache methods with rapid horseback movements across rugged terrain. His units moved at speeds unattainable for the regular cavalry units of the time. He brilliantly organized ambushes and instantly withdrew his men from the line of fire. His campaigns are studied as examples of the ideal use of complex terrain. Their ability to withstand superior forces for decades is unparalleled in history. They turned their mountains into an insurmountable barrier for the most advanced armies of their time. Apache strategists demonstrated the triumph of the human spirit and adaptability under extreme conditions. Their names still command immense respect among military historians worldwide. These people became the true masters of the mountain canyons of the complex and unpredictable frontier. Politics and military strategies cannot exist without a solid economic foundation. The Comanche built a unique economic model based on absolute control of trade routes. They became the primary intermediaries in the exchange of goods between the Spanish colonies and the northern tribes. Vast flows of raw materials, provisions, and handicrafts passed through their hands. This monopoly provided them with the resources necessary to maintain their mobile forces. Their society transformed from a group of hunter-gatherers into a complex commercial structure. They organized regular fairs that drew representatives from a multitude of different cultures. These events served not only as trading venues, but also as centers for diplomatic negotiations. The Comanche dictated prices in terms of exchange, relying on their absolute military superiority. Economic hegemony became the primary tool for expanding their political influence. The Apaches developed a completely different economic model, focused on maximum independence. They practiced local agriculture in hidden mountain valleys, inaccessible to outsiders. Harvests of corn and beans provided them with the minimum necessary food supply in case of a blockade. They obtained additional resources through selective raids on passing caravans and neighbors. Such a decentralized economy made them invulnerable to global trade crises. For the mountain dwellers, material possessions were never an end in themselves or an indicator of high social status. They valued only those items that had a direct, practical use for survival. Their encampments were devoid of luxury items, allowing them to set out on a journey in a matter of minutes. The absence of cumbersome supply trains made their movements incredibly fast and stealthy. Asceticism became the foundation of their tactical advantage over their wealthier neighbors. The difference in economic systems also dictated different approaches to the development of new territories. The Comanches constantly needed new pastures and markets to sustain their system. Their expansion was systematic in nature, and aimed at integrating new regions. The Apaches, on the other hand, were content with control over small but strategically important areas of terrain. They did not need a vast empire to meet their basic needs. Gradually, the Comanche economy became so complex that it required the creation of new social institutions. Specializations emerged within groups: traders, diplomats, and organizers of supply and logistics. Society became stratified by level of wealth, which was unusual for most nomadic peoples. This structural complexity made their political system more akin to European states. They transitioned from mere survival to the deliberate construction of their own prairie civilization. The confrontation between these two economic systems became a classic example of the struggle between globalization and isolationism. The Comanche model proved incredibly effective during periods of economic growth in the region. They created the most powerful commercial empire in the history of pre-Columbian North America. The Apache model demonstrated unmatched resilience in the face of the most severe crises and blockades. Each was perfectly adapted to specific geographical and social conditions. A study of these people's economic systems debunks the myths about the primitiveness of frontier dwellers. They possessed a deep understanding of the principles of trade, logistics, and resource management. Their economic strategies were as complex and well thought out as their military campaigns. This foundation allowed them to compete on equal terms with the leading European powers. We will draw a conclusion about which system proved more viable in the final chapter of our analysis. In summarizing this large-scale historical confrontation, we must rely exclusively on objective facts. For a long time, popular culture distorted the true balance of power in the Wild West during the 19th century. A study of political structure, economics, and tactics reveals a completely different, more complex picture. The Comanche and Apache built powerful systems of control over vast territories of the continent. Each of these groups dominated its own specific niche and geographical zone. In terms of the scale of political influence and control over resources, the Comanches held the upper hand. They created a veritable trading empire, dictating their terms to European colonists and neighboring tribes. Their maneuverable tactics on the Great Plains were unmatched in effectiveness and destructiveness. They successfully assimilated other groups, constantly increasing their demographic and military potential. Their system most closely resembled the classical understanding of territorial expansion and domination. However, dominance is not always measured by square kilometers of controlled territory or the number of allies. The Apaches demonstrated absolute control over the rugged, mountainous terrain of the Southwest. They created an impenetrable shield that no regular army of the time could breach. Their tactics of decentralization and stealth proved to be the most effective method of survival in the face of the enemy's total superiority. They excelled in the art of asymmetric conflict and the psychological attrition of the enemy. The Spanish Empire unequivocally recognized the Comanches as the primary political force in the region. Official international treaties were concluded with them, and full-scale trade was conducted at the state level. The Apaches, on the other hand, were viewed more as an insurmountable natural disaster with which no agreement could be reached. This difference in perception by the Europeans underscores the state status of the Plains Empire. The Comanches integrated into the global economy, while the Apaches remained independent and elusive. In direct confrontations on open terrain, victory always went to the Comanche forces. Their logistics, speed, and maneuverability left the mountain tribes no chance of success. This is precisely what forced the eastern Apaches to abandon the prairies forever and retreat deep into the mountains. But in the canyons and gorges, the situation changed dramatically in favor of the stealthy defenders. In their natural habitat, the Apaches were absolutely invincible and easily repelled any incursions. The objective conclusion is that the Wild West was divided between two hegemons. The Great Plains were the undisputed domain of the Comanche Empire, which dictated its will to all its neighbors. The Rocky Mountains and the deserts of the Southwest remained an impregnable stronghold of independent Apache groups. This was not so much a confrontation between two peoples as a clash of two different philosophies of survival. Each had achieved perfection within its specific ecosystem and climate zone. Our analysis demonstrates that both peoples emerged victorious in the struggle to preserve their identities. The Comanche built an empire unmatched on the North American plains. The Apache defended their freedom under unprecedented pressure from advanced nations. Their survival strategies have become classics of military thought and are studied in modern academies. They were the true masters of their lands, imposing their own rules on vast colonial armies. Their history teaches us that true strength lies in understanding one's environment. The winner in the Wild West was the one who could adapt most quickly to rapid changes. Their methods of controlling territory and resources remain relevant to this day. This unique experience of state building and survival will forever remain in the annals of humanity. Studying their political evolution helps us better understand the complex processes of modern nation building. The history of the Comanche-Apache conflict demonstrates the incredible depth of political thought among the peoples of North America. They built highly complex social and economic systems, successfully competing with European empires. Which of these two survival strategies do you think is more sustainable in the face of constant crises? Please share your thoughts in the comments and suggest topics for future research. Be sure to subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our new episodes on the history of frontier settlement.